Hello there, YouTube. Welcome to the Stratosphere Studio. I'm your host, Bill Whittle. Looking a little shaggy tonight. Uh, the hair was angry that night, my friends. And looks like I'll be getting a haircut in a couple days. So, other than that, everything's been pretty good. And been working an awful lot on the basics. And I do actually have a bunch of stuff to show people. I didn't have a chance to put it next to the. I'll probably do that maybe next week. But I want to put like some of the latest stuff I rendered, which you'll see tonight, up against the very first stuff I rendered, and we'll see. Let me see here. Can't really answer that right now, Coach. We got our Monday night show. If you want to save that for Tuesday or sneak it in, we'll see if we can do that. But David Boutte says birthday tomorrow for DeForest Kelly, Tom Baker, Paul Stanley, and my mom. Well, that's all cool to know. I knew one of them. So anyway, yeah, I got some pretty cool stuff here. So I just had to make a last minute change. I got everything all front loaded for once, and then at the last minute I had to. I'm glad I checked. I realized I had like an older version of what I wanted to show. That's what I want right there. So I got three things to show tonight. Actually, we'll let the room settle down just a little bit, and then we'll get rolling, and then we'll get to questions. Okay, so let me see. The thing I got to deal with this race. First of all, it's a great question. Secondly, Race Bannon gets a Race Bannon 19 gets an automatic question answered, and Race is asking. I just love that name. I love that character too. I just thought he was so cool. Hey Bill, got any recommendations for a guy visiting LA? Already checked out the Staircase Beach earlier today. Yeah, Staircase is awesome. There's something to be said for doing the Hollywood thing just to see the footprints and the handprints. I mean, I did it, and that was cool. If you're out at the Staircase, you've probably already done Pacific Coast Highway out to Malibu and back, and that's just beautiful. Place is kind of enough, really. Can't really think of anything else. No, it's just trying to think. It's kind of hanging out in Santa Monica can be kind of fun too. For me, it was just things like seeing the Hollywood sign, like holy cow, that's actually real, and that sort of stuff. But nothing really, leaps to mind here. Before we get to the animation stuff, maybe you know what? I think I'll go to I'll do the videos first, and then we'll do the animation stuff. Griffith Observatory gives you a great view of LA. That's a great point, Roadrunner. Thank you. So that's kind of fun, and a good view, and that's pretty much it. I wouldn't do the downtown Skid Row thing if I were you, but other than that, it's just a swinging town, and I have to say the town is looking good. When it rains, we have this 2-week period. We just had a lot of rain. It hasn't rained in a week, but we have a couple weeks there where it just looks like Ireland. It's so green. Let me see. Here's our Burton says, "Hey, Bill, crazy world we live in. Are you aware? Have you watched any of this John AI director Oliver YouTube and different channels talking about silver?" No. I do have some stuff that I've seen. I didn't get to see the link yet. I just didn't have time. Marisha Dark sent me a link saying that somebody had already done the Kirk Goes Back to Starfleet Academy thing. I just needed to get that out of my system. I don't need those kind of distractions. I heard somebody also, I think in the comments, I think it was Eric, about the truth bombs, and that as soon as we get the next milestone on the colonies, which is really what I need to go out and get the rest of the founding fathers, then I am going to just, once I have that stuff, and then I'm just doing the footwork, then I'm going to do the truth bombs, because they were fun, and it's the same technology, and that technology has improved amazingly. So Let me see here. Yeah, I'll just wait another minute or two. So here's something I've given some thought to. We can, maybe get a vote on this or something. I don't know. I don't know if it's going to get 3 people or 30 or more. But I'm giving some thought to on Thursday night on the Stratosphere Lounge, making that like a test episode of whatever we want to call it, like Gen Z Academy, where just talking to Gen Z, listening to Gen Z, talking about the issues and stuff. We get questions that appear in the chat fairly frequently from Gen Z, and I guess it was Ian Nolan who had a lot of things to correct me on, and I've been thinking about that an awful lot and stuff. And I don't know. I'd like to do like a test run on it on Thursday, and if it turns out that there's anybody there, then I would give some thought to doing a third night of shows or something. I don't want to take anything away, but I really think, and that would be exclusively answering comment section questions from Gen Z. If you're hey, here's a quick experiment. If you're watching this now and you are a member of Gen Z, just type in Z in the comments if you could. Just that's all. Just randomly curious. But they sure did get a short end of the stick, and I think I could help. So that's that. Yeah, I might actually try that next week. Hey, Atomic Conqueror, what a cool! How did you get that bitchin' cool name, dude? Atomic Conqueror is it's just phenomenal. Makes me want to do a whole just a whole AI series on that kind of retros 50s 60s kind of thing. Got some millennials, got some Gen Xers, got some boomers. The more I look at it, I've already said before, it's kind of silly, but there is in fact there is something to this Generation Jones thing. 58 or something to 64. It's not even a half a generation. It's a quarter generation. But that transition was really, really something. So anyway, yeah. All right. Well, we'll see. I think maybe we'll, if it said that on YouTube, and maybe it'll be just like a really short show, or maybe I'll do it on Friday night or something like that. Roadrunner wants to know which generation covers the older than dirt people. That'd be us, boomers, and that kind of thing. I think most people don't realize that there was a generation between the silent generation. I'm sorry, the greatest generation and the boomers, and that was the silent generation, and that was Neil Armstrong's generation. So too young to be in World War II, Korean War veterans, and that kind of thing. So, sorry, so here we all are. So, okay, so I got a bunch of things to show you guys, work that I've been doing, and I think I've set this up correctly, so that I can get these things in sync within at least a second or so. I've been doing an awful lot of work on the fundamentals. Been resisting the temptation to render cool frames. One of the things I learned about from D is for Dungeon, that is, if you don't get everything absolutely, the fundamentals locked, then it's going to have errors that just compound themselves downstream, and you'll just end up hating yourself. So for this, what the fundamentals consist of is just it's just really been a tedious week in terms of the workload, but it pays off, and I think you'll agree. So in traditional CGI, traditional computer graphics, anything that's artificially created has a problem that we don't have in the real world. And the problem is, imagine you've got a really excellent zoom lens, and you're looking at a forest. So you can see the whole forest, and you zoom in, and the closer in you get, all the more detail. And let's say you had this incredible zoom lens, and you finally got to the point where you could see like individual leaves. So that's not a problem in reality, because reality creates its own reality. But in CGI and in AI, you've got a problem with that mega zoom. And here's the problem. You have to pick whether you want the forest or whether you want the leaf, because you don't have enough room to store 100 million leaves. And if you just start with the forest, there's not enough detail to zoom in on the leaves. It just doesn't know what to do. Now, in traditional CGI and game engines, this is solved with something called LOD, a level of detail. So if you're looking at the entire forest, each tree, and especially further back you go, they're less and less and less complex till finally in the back they're just jagged kind of green shapes. And as you get closer and closer and closer to them, the engine calculates the distance from the camera lens to the object and up-reses it so that it contains more information, but there's fewer trees. So by the time you get down to a leaf, you get this incredibly detailed image of a leaf, but you don't have to render any of the forest, so it actually works out pretty well. And if you're a gamer, you know what that looks like when you're running at full speed and you can just see things on the horizon just like getting sharper and so on. So you have the same problem if you're trying to do AI. If you want to do a full-length shot of a man, right, head-to-toe full-length shot to show his costume and what he's wearing and stuff, then if you zoom in on that image and just enlarge it to the face, there's not enough detail on the face. Conversely, if you do the face and zoom it out, you can tell AI to put him in a gray sweater and black pants, but it'll do that differently every time. So how do you solve this problem? Well, the way you solve it is, first of all, try to avoid the big zooms, but the way to do it is you do I have 4K close-ups of the faces, and then I need 4K close-ups of the faces at 3/4 angles each way so that the AI knows what the facial geometry is. And I have four panels of the guy showing the entire costume. And if you give it the full-length shot and you give it the face and you tell it zoom in on the man and use the face for detail reference, then the AI will have a target. It'll know what the face is going to look like. Otherwise, there's not enough information in that little face, and when it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, it starts to really drift. So we'll come back to that subject in a minute. First of all, let's start with something lighthearted. Actually, let me use this so I can not. That's okay. I don't need to hear it. Something a little more lighthearted. I've mentioned that there's a robot, and that this short that I'm doing is the Cast 27 short. Tells an awful lot about the Pioneer story. Has a lot of time with Jake and Will, a fair amount of time with Jake and Lisa, some time with Jake and Claire. But the discovery of the robot is a story in itself. And I don't know if I've ever shown the robot before, but I might have shown a still of it. So I did some tests. I love this robot. I saw this robot years ago. It's a CGI asset. And I really like it because I think it's very non-traditional. It's a biped, but it doesn't have a head, which I really like. Now, the animation engine is doing a very, very good job of assuming the geometry. In fact, it's doing an amazing job of assuming the geometry of the motions of the robot. But to really get the robot nailed, I need to do 3 different angles, 4 angles, back of the robot, 2/3 one way, 2/3 close, and then I need to go into my CGI animation and show the hand open and closed and a mid position. If I give it 3 still frames, it knows exactly how to open the hand and all of that, which I haven't done yet. So there's a couple little drifts on this. But what you're about to see is me. I did a rendering of a photographic background, and I added the full-length version of Jake, added the full-length version of the robot. So you'll see that every single frame of this starts out with Jake and the robot in the same position. And then I just gave it different prompts, and I let the I just let the animation engine do its thing. So Jake looks a little goofier. In fact, he looks a lot goofier in this. Facial details not quite as good as it is because I didn't give him the close-up, but we're not going to worry about that right now. I'll show you how we solved that problem because I've got that today too. But what this is a motion test. So I'm just looking at the motion of Jake, which is very good because it's got millions and millions and millions of videos of people walking and dancing and doing all that other stuff. And then the AI has to solve for the robot. So basically what I did was I just basically said, have the robot interact with Jake, have Jake chase the robot around the room, have Jake and the robot dancing to 80s music. And this is the result. So I'm going to just do a light narration over it. I tried to get the sound as balanced as I could, but if it's not, then forgive me, but I'll get these going as fast as I can here. Okay, and so this is really first motion tests of the robot. Just getting them to crouch down to see how small I can make them. Now you're going to see him picking up Jake, and the physics are I have to fix with the prompt. Jake is too stiff. The robot doesn't pick him up in the right way. Picks him up at a different time every time. It's solving the physics, but the actual mechanics of the balance and the legs and the arms and everything actually looks pretty good. We'll get that finessed. It's just, I just said, go have the robot go pick over the man. So that's what happened. Okay, now here's Jake and the robot just goofing. And Jake sounds stupid, but this is a motion test. It's a realism test. And I'm especially looking at the articulation of the robot limbs on this because it's got backward knees, and to me it looks perfect. It just looks incredibly perfect. Of course, you got to be careful because you got a fairly powerful robot here. And the physics of the wall aren't great, but this is fun. That looks really, really good to me. Let me turn that down over here. It's as a guy who's used to CGI, this looks really, really, really good. Look at the way the robot balances when it kicks up a leg. It's just astonishing. Astonishing. Can it do the electric slide? It can, Air Techie, and I'll show you how in a minute when I get to Jake. Okay, so there's the robot. And I thought that looked, really, really good. And this is what I mean by going to the basics. Before I drag these things out into the shots, I've got to give the AI it's got to have the fundamentals. How did the arms bend? It needs before and after on the arms. How did the fingers work? One of the things that AI did here, and I have to correct this, this is what I'm doing next, is that the robot actually has like 3 fingers and a thumb, and they're curved like claws. But when he gets close to the camera or when he picks anything up, it automatically goes to 5 fingers because that's what the AI was trained on, is trained on people's hands with 5 fingers. So the way you get around that is you put in a reference panel that shows the hand with the 3 claws, like open, closed, midway, and then it knows what to do. Otherwise, it's just improvising. So there's that. So that was a motion test for the robot and under kind of ideal lighting. And I'm really, really happy with that. I'm going to improve it. In the same way you're going to see with Jake, if you do detail, and I've got to do the same thing for the rover and everything else. So you got to go in and do like detailed shots. So the rover will, I mean, the robot will have like little decals on it, so that when you zoom out, it'll be just like maybe a little yellow, tag or a little yellow blur. As you get closer and closer and closer, the AI goes to that reference section of the body and it says danger, high electrical, whatever, high electrical load and all that other stuff. So there's that. Okay, next up, I've got some animations of the rover. There's one or two exceptions, but almost all of these are the family's rovers. This is the Turner rover. This is the Hero rover. That also has to be locked in, which has not happened yet. But what I want you to look at here is the physics. The source images are not very realistic. It looks kind of cartoony. So I'm not interested in the quality of the image, but I am interested in what you guys think of the physics of this. Because, and by physics I mean things like, are the tires in contact with the ground? Is the suspension riding over the terrain correctly? The rooster tails of snow and stuff. I got to tell you, man, this is again, we're going to do much more realistic images than this, but just look at the physics on this, because this is absolutely, I think, frickin' amazing. Okay, ready? Here comes the rover animation. That's phenomenal. Not happy with the people inside. The rover looks kind of, doesn't look realistic, but the physics, look how they rock when the thing goes over the terrain. And the skidding and the chunks of snow, and when it hits a snow thing, it goes up. And then just look at the suspension and the wheels. It's perfect, man. It's absolutely freaking perfect. It's perfect. This is a different rover, but this is the rover pulling up to that abandoned station. So I rendered this before I had the rover lock. Now this landscape is not from Midjourney. This is Nano Banana Pro. It's much more realistic than the landscape you saw before. The other one was a little artistic. This is Midjourney. It's a little bit kind of fantasy world thing, but the Nano Banana Pro stuff is very realistic. So I got Jake's uniform, and I got him indoors and outdoors clothes. He's inside the rover. We're orbiting around him, and I think that looks pretty good. This is a real problem. The AI does not know what to do with this rover. It's never seen it before, so it keeps making the people too big. This one starts without him in the cab, but once he's in the cab, the zoom in is pretty cool. Lighting's not bad. Rover's not bad. That's not a bad shot. So overall, I'm thinking pretty impressive. The gravity on this planet, Dave, is I think like about 0.89 or something, close enough. I haven't experimented yet with like low gravity. Well, there's some, Lord Bias says looks good, but there's something looks off to me. Yeah, there's a couple things that are not quite right yet, because I haven't articulated the positions of these things so that the AI knows exactly how to do it. But just with one prompt, like the rover crosses the field of ice and goes over a snowbank, it's really astonishing, really amazing. Airtechie says, can the AI create scalable image models? Not yet, probably by next year. Now we've got the big one. So I spent the last week doing nothing but Jake. I put 2 images of Lisa in there because I had her face kind of locked earlier. Jake is a much tougher nut to crack. First of all, he's got the beard. He's got unusual facial geometry, but I had to create a prop. I needed a prop for CAS 27. I needed supplemental oxygen. So the air on this planet is thin and the oxygen percentage is lower. So it's breathable, but you've only got a couple minutes before you black out and you start to get hypoxic pretty quick. So I had to build this respirator. Now, the problem is I didn't want the thing hanging on a lanyard, but they take it out because Jake is trying to condition himself and condition Will into getting used to that high altitude. We've talked about that before. So what I did was I made a self-contained unit, and I started scuba diving when I was 6. So it goes into your mouth like a scuba regulator, except it's not hooked up to hoses. It's just got 2 little oxygen tanks here. That is a tough thing to render, especially when you start getting into the angles. I'm not training the AI, Coffee Shinato. Technically I am. I'm training it for myself. I'm not training the engine the way that, that the people that own it do. AirTechie says maybe make hypoxia based on physical efforts. Well, as it turns out, when Jake is trying to open the hatch and he's working hard, he's just booming on it, and so he ends up breathing the oxygen all the time. So here's what this one is. It starts off with just 2 shots of Lisa, because I've got her pretty much locked, I think. But this is Jake, and you're going to see a lot of. It's going to start with 5, I think, different big close-ups of Jake's head rotating, which is different lighting and stuff. It's pretty boring, but here's what you need to be aware of here. Every single time there's a cut, that's the AI re-rendering from scratch. And if the images that I gave the AI are off, then the character's going to drift. So what we're looking for in these close-ups of Jake is it a photorealistically believable face, number one, and number two, every time there's a cut, does it look like the same guy? Because that's the easiest way to tell AI slop, is that the characters look different, sometimes subtly different, sometimes really crazily different from one cut to another. And a lot of times when they try to do like a Star Trek parody or something, you see that kind of looks a bit like Kirk, and that looks kind of like Spock, but then the next shot doesn't look like Spock exactly, it's different. So the thing to look for here is character consistency and micro details in the face. So I've got it here. I'm going to drag it in on Twitch. I'm going to go to YouTube, and then after this, there's a motion test, which I only did last night. I started with it last night. When you see the motion test, I took a piece of video. It's not a motion capture file. It's just a piece of video, and it's a guy just kind of doing this. So you'll see Jake do that, and then the second motion test of Jake, you'll see. I just thought to myself, what's like the most iconic movement I can think of in the movie? So I grabbed that. And then the third one is much more. The second one is really tough. It's a low quality image. There's lots of distractions. But the third one is perfect. It's an isolated shot of a guy who does he's a robot, does the robot dance. And then we've got some renders of Jake in the Nano Banana backgrounds, which I think look really, really good. Okay, ready? Here we go. So this will be the tests on Jake's face. And again, we're looking for character consistency across cuts here. Ready? And action. So that's Lisa. Great expressions.
What?
I just think it's perfect. I just think it's fantastic. Okay, so here's some Jake tests. Now, that to me looks like a guy standing in a studio turning around. And the details around the eyes are great. The lighting is different on this second shot, but you just can't do this with CGI. You just can't. It's freaking perfect. And remember, every time it's a cut, it's an entirely new render of Jake based on the information that I'm giving it. He looks real to me. All the lighting changes, I think he looks fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. And consistent. And this final one, when he's looking at you as he turns, it's a little bit creepy. A little creepy. Kind of cool. All right, here's a zoom in from the wide to the close, and notice that the detail in the face is preserved all the way down to the micro wrinkles. All right, here comes the first of the motion test. It's just a guy that he's just goofing on camera, which is kind of the default that came with it. And then the next one is what was the most iconic movement I could find on the web. And there's a lot of cuts, so it freaks out. It doesn't know what to do. It's a little wonky, but the source video was so poor that I'm really, really pleased with it. And this final one is the robot. Now, if you go to the trouble to get the basics right, then you end up with images like this one coming up here. That's just perfect. The motion capture is perfect. Okay, now this shot to me looks like film. I just think it's unbelievable. I think these shots are unbelievable. Again, that's a walk-up. Facial detail is correct, and the mask is doing its translucency. That's a Nano Banana Pro background. I think it's just perfect. I just think it's absolutely freaking perfect. And it's the last shot of Jake. I don't know if it's this one or the one after this one. Yeah, it's the next one. I love the way this ends because the animation software is creating the stuff on the left. And look at these ice crystals growing out of the rocks there on the end. It's just epic, man. It's epic. It's freaking phenomenal. Phenomenal. His beard does not impair the mask because it goes in his mouth like a scuba rescue. It's designed to be a emergency supplemental oxygen. So anyway, I think those last shots they're good enough to go. So the next step is to do Will. So I need close-ups of Will. I need wide shots of Will in different. Yes, it is not regular kit. That's an emergency tool. That's not what he would use. He'd have a backpack. He'd have a mask. He'd have straps. This is just something like if the pressure fails in your mouth, that kind of thing. So I just thought it looked great. I could not be happier. I think that is like Leia in Return of the Jedi. Or like in those kind of things they use in the Phantom Menace when they go underwater. I think it looks really cool. There's still 2 little oxygen tanks on there, and they just screw them in, and they're great. So yes, that's what I've been up to, and I'm real happy, especially those last images of him on that mountain. I didn't go for an alien environment because the test is how does it look in an environment that does it really look like he's on top of a mountain? And to me, it absolutely did. I thought he looked great. So all of this stuff to lock the basics down is really important. So there's that. And it'll be clearer when he holds the thing and puts it in his mouth. So once you see even if you see the prop, you'll see it's a regulator kind of thing. So I thought it was really impressive. I was real happy with it. I think we can run with that. Okay, so Lapco92 with a super chat says, "Great project, Bill, but can Kathleen Kennedy fix it? She can. She can make it gay and put a chick in it, and that ought to do it." Yeah, she's not getting her filthy hands on this thing. So all that stuff to say, go into the details of making 4K close-ups of the face at different angles, and then removing the background, rendering it against neutral gray so that the AI has a real sharp edge. It knows what to pull, and it took a couple of days of just kind of tedious work to get that. But man, I'm just real happy with it. Especially if you see the very. I'm gonna go find the first animation I did of Jake and Lisa, and you'll just be amazed how much has happened in 3 or 4 months. So that's great. Okay, here we go. Questions for 11926. Curated by Marusha Dark. Thank you, Marusha. Appreciate it, as always. Thanks very much. All right, let's see. We got a Marusha Dark. We got a Braden Higby. We got a Bob Neef. We got a Roadrunner. Got a Steve Young. Got an Eric Blake. Got another Eric Blake. Okay, let's see what we got. Oh, no, I'll get to it when I get to Eric's second question. All right, here we go. Marusha Dark. The topic, the Wheel of Time. The Wheel of Time. I know you're more of a sci-fi guy, but I was curious if you're familiar with the lore of Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time series. I'm not. Often ranked in the top 10 best fantasy series of all time. I hesitate to call it an inverse Mary Sue, but that's the closest I can describe it in 5 words or less. All women are born with a connection to magic by virtue of their sex. Many become healers or tribal leaders. Those who show potential are taken to the White Tower to spend years training to become Aes Sedai. Powerful witches who govern the realm in a matriarchy. Men lack such connection to magic. At best, they can become wards of Aes Sedai, okay, whatever, and serve as physical bodyguards, training in mortal combat. Well, what do you need bodyguards if you got the magic? The one exception is the man destined to become the reincarnation of a male mage known as the Dragon Reborn, who will either go on to defeat the Dark One or else bring about the end of the world himself. Many other men attempt to harness this power and title for themselves, creating fake personas and cults. Those who try to learn magic are either destroyed by it or purged by the militant arm of the Aes Sedai. Only the dragon is born with the ability to tame magic. The Aes Sedai themselves are split between those who find the dragon and those who would destroy him. You also have factions such as the White Cloaks, who are a religious order that view magic as heresy and seek to destroy both the Aes Sedai and the dragon. All in all, it's a really fascinating and complex world with deep lore and political intrigue that I think you'd find interesting if you're not already familiar with it. I'm not, and it sounds wonderful, but I am not filled with spare time at the moment. So thank you for the recommendation. There's so many great things to get to read, and the only nonfiction reading that I've done, I think, in decades, I could say this was some confidence. Yeah, in fact, I can't think of an exception, was reading all of the Warhammer 41K Horus Heresy and the Siege of Terra books. They were absolutely fantastic. I loved them. But that's the only nonfiction I've read. Everything else has been history and, that kind of stuff. I'm waiting for somebody to make. Somebody saw I saw Al-Farazan Prime from George there, and man, I want somebody to do the Silmarillion. This technology is getting more and more mature every day. Did I say I've read the only fiction I've probably got there? The only fiction I've read is the 40K thing. Everything else is nonfiction. Might have gotten that backwards. Silmarillion is, really, the Silmarillion makes Lord of the Rings look kind of like a shabby little side quest, honestly. Dolphin Burrows says, have you ever read The Travels of Marco Polo? No, I haven't, but I know who he is. Currently reading it, and it's so interesting. The way he describes such a foreign world is crazy. Yeah. Once again, on the last edition or 2 editions of the whatever podcast, I never watched it, I just see the clips. He asked his panel of women to name 3 countries. Couldn't do it. he named them. He asked them to name when World War II happened. 1980, 1860. What was the one? Who did we get our independence from? Nobody knew. Name 3 countries. And these chicks think they're gonna land millionaires. They all think they're 10s. They're mids. Maybe a 7 on the show, occasionally an 8. But the one thing I've never heard them address is, let's just say you were as attractive as you seem to think you are. What on earth makes you think that a guy who's making $1 million, what a lot of them say their minimum is $10 million a year, what makes you think that a guy who makes $10 million a year is going to want to spend any time talking to you at all on a long flight, let's say? Guys who make $10 million a year can just jet off to Italy, which they do. But they don't jet off to Italy with people who don't know where Italy is. And the idea that these women think that, that they're going to socialize with these kind of men, and they can't speak about history. They can't speak about. There's not a guy on earth who's making that kind of money who would be caught dead with somebody like that. It's the same thing with tattoos and piercings. Just astonishing to me. Absolutely astonishing. Dave Big Boutte says they don't even know what Italy is. It's the delusion is off the charts. It's just insane. I see what you did there, PGTMR, and I admire it. Braden Higby, howdy from Idaho. Howdy, Braden. Bet it's a little cold up there and a little snowy. Here are a couple of thoughts on your nuclear rover. I'd consider a Braden cycle power plant. The reactor heats air, which spins a gas turbine, which could either directly drive the transmission or power a generator for electric drive. I kind of like the second one better, I think. Probably a little less complicated. A lot of the micro-reactor projects today are Brayton cycle. I need to write that down. I'm going to do a little screen grab. I have never heard of the Brayton cycle reactors, but clearly I need to know something about it, so thank you very much. Plus, the rover would sound like an M1 Abrams, which I think is cool. I think it's cool, too. Although the new one has gone back to the new M1X or whatever they're calling it. Did they get rid of the gas turbine on that? I don't know. It's cool looking, though. I'd assume uranium enrichment is sparse on the frontier, so maybe a sodium-cooled breeder reactor would make sense. See, this is why I just love my audience. It's just awesome. After initial loading of enriched uranium or plutonium, it'd be able to produce plutonium from natural uranium. Experimental breeder reactor 2 is my favorite. If you want a physically small reactor, it'll need enriched uranium or plutonium or something exotic like californium. Shielding for a reactor on a rover would be challenging. I'd start by sticking it in the middle of a water tank. You might want some sort of annular arrangement where the black water tank surrounds the freshwater tank so that you don't deplete your shielding as you use water. Now, as for a question, how does direction work on your probability gates? Does the side a ship emerges from at the destination depend on the side it entered? How does that work if a ship misses the window and needs to go around? Well, if a ship misses the window and needs to go around, it just doesn't fire, and it's stuck out there in real space, maybe halfway between the two. So that would be bad. As far as knowing where it is, that's a really good question. The actual process is that membrane of ionized hydrogen is all of the atoms are aligned with a laser, and they all reach the same energy state, so the qubits think that these two places are in the same place. Airtechie says they would inherit the relative direction. I would agree that the momentum vector would be there, so that would mean that that obviously would mean that these gates need to be very precisely controlled in roll, pitch, and yaw, so that as long as you enter the first gate and all the rest of the gates maintain their alignment, which would drift over time because everything's moving, then that shouldn't matter really. I agree that I just never gave it any thought before. It's a really interesting question. But I think you'd inherit the momentum. So basically, if the vector was from Earth to Alpha Centauri, it would be that momentum vector, and that's how the gates would stage, I would imagine. We'll see. I have to build one and find out how it works. Great question, though. Bob Neve. I can repost this for Thursday if you wish, but let me try to posit this as a pop culture question. I happen to slightly know the pastor and family that was harassed yesterday in Wackadoodle, Minnesota. I worked at the same private classical Christian school that their family attended. I only heard about this today. I haven't seen any video of it, but apparently the anti-ICE leftists went into a church service, and apparently wasn't Don Lemon there. Don Lemon was there showing their outrage. So keep it up. Keep it up. Anyway, it goes on to say that you won't find a nicer family, and they have a heart for the city. These are the people that they went to harass. Here's my question. What was the tipping point in our culture that caused so many leftists to cross social boundaries that had been in place for hundreds of years? E.g., do not interrupt a meeting or a church service, do not block a road, etc. Basically, the question is, what leads to mobs? So glad to be in Montana. Oh, and apart from about 100 square miles of Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minnesota is a great place. It is a great place. So that's really an excellent question. And I think my first impulse would be to say that that the formation of mobs and the crossing of social boundaries happens as a result of not enforcing the law at the lowest levels. This is kind of like, it's a sort of, I guess it's kind of a variation on the broken windows theory, but here's what I'm saying. Get your bingo cards out. I see dozens of body cam videos a week. I'm completely obsessed with them because it's the bleeding edge of the social pathology. If your behavior was erratic enough, I mean, if you think about it, there's thousands, tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of traffic interactions and things like that on a daily basis. And the ones that make it to these police body cam collections are the ones that are the most interesting because they're the most unhinged. But with that said, I think of all the traffic body cams I've seen, I would say that the people have their driver's license on them 10 to 20% of the time. 4 out of 5 times when these people are pulled over, they do not have their driver's license on them. Either they're hiding their identity, or more often, if it's just, like a young suburban, usually Gen Zers or millennials. It's like, can I see your driver's license? I don't have it with me. Do you have a driver's license? Yes. Give me your name and so on. So then the guy has to go look up the driver's license. I don't know about you guys, but for me, I used to live in I guess I kind of still do. It's kind of like this mortal fear of finding out that I don't have my driver's license on me, which has happened to me probably, 4 times in my life where I've been driving and I just realized, my God, I left my wallet in my other pants. It's like, you're required to have your driver's license on you, and the police treat it as if it were just. It's like you ask them if they had a subscription to Field and Stream. Do you have any outdoor magazines in the car? No, officer, I don't. Oh, okay, no problem. And when you start with that down there that low, you realize that rules don't apply, and it works its way up and works its way up and works its way up. When shoplifting happens, and people, they're not even shoplifting anymore. They're simply walking into stores. They're just taking items off the shelves, putting in a shopping cart, and going out the door. That's not even shoplifting. John Pershing says, it's selection bias, Bill. These are the videos being fed to us, and I'd say 90% of them, 95% of them do have it. They're just playing the "you have no authority over me" game. Yeah, well, that's why I kind of predicated it. But nevertheless, the reaction of the police and the reaction of those people who I agree are a small percentage of the total number of arrests aren't concerned about it. And I understand also that most people aren't shoplifters, and the few of them that are that brazen are not normally there. It is selection bias. We're seeing it. Nevertheless, I don't recall anything like this when I was growing up. And and so when you look at more serious offenses like aggravated battery on a police officer and somebody on their fourth DUI, you find out that the charges get dropped, or they get they violated their parole, so they get an extension of their parole. There's no consequences for the small infractions, and so people grow up thinking there's no consequences for the big infractions. Scott Ott told a story which is really sad. I think it's just an excellent example. He was a jury foreman a year ago, I want to say, on this case where a guy had committed, I don't think it was even armed robbery. It might have been burglary. I don't think it was a violent crime. But the guy had 4 prior felony convictions, and so it was a mandatory sentencing case. And so this guy committed burglary or something, and they found him guilty, and they had to give him 50 years. That was a sentence for burglary. 50 years. And I just despise crime. I really do. 50 years is too long for burglary, assuming obviously that nobody was hurt or wasn't with a weapon or anything like that. But my point is this, and this is what Scott said. Because this kid, had committed 3 previous felonies, and all the charges had either been dropped or walked down to the bare bone minimum or given community service or whatever, he had never had a chance to learn that this is wrong because he didn't do any time for any of them. Then he got himself into his 4th case where there was no longer any choice, so he gets hit with this 50-year sentence. So is it fair? I don't know. Maybe it's payback for the previous 3 felonies, and of course, if you've got 3 felonies or 4 felonies, those are just the times they caught you. That's not the number of times you did it. That's just the times you got caught. But because the consequences were never applied early, because he never got 1 year or 6 months or never got 2 years or 5 years, he got 50 years. And this is, I think, kind of what is causing it. I have to tell you, I think one of the most revealing pieces of evidence of liberal, actual, genuine insanity is when this woman got shot. I mean, it really just leaves me gobsmacked. When this woman got shot, her wife was driving she was driving and her wife was in, that's right. She was driving, her wife was out harassing all of the ICE agents. So she gets in the car, she drives towards the agent fires, shoots her and kills her, and then you can hear, and I mean this is within 10 seconds, you hear the woman's partner just wailing at the top of her lungs, "I can't believe they're using real bullets." You just think about that for a minute. That's clearly audible on those tapes. "I can't believe that these armed men are using real bullets. I can't believe that these armed men who are telling me to stay in the car or get out of the car, whatever it was, are serious." And that's just plain madness. It's just madness. But it's how progressive minds work. It's all rhetorical to them. It's all argument. They've never faced consequences, ever. They've never, ever, ever faced consequences. And these guys said, it's the same thing on the body cam videos. The police say, "Get out of the car." "I'm not getting out of the car." "Ma'am, you need to get out of the car." "I'm not getting out of the car." "I'm giving you a lawful order, ma'am, to get out of the car." "Well, I'm not getting out of the car." "Ma'am, this is how it's going to go. You're either going to open the door and get out of the car, or I'm going to smash the window and pull you out of the car." "Well, you can't do that because that's against the law." "Ma'am, I'm giving you and this goes on for 20 minutes. 20 minutes. And they are convinced that the whole thing is rhetorical, that they can argue their way out of it. The first thing these people do, and this is just about every one of them, no matter ethnicity or age or whatever, but almost universally, the first thing that happens when the cop walks up to the car is they get their phone out and they just start scrolling. They think that as long as they're busy scrolling and not paying any attention to the officer, then the officer's just going to go away. He's going to give up. They're going to wear him down the way they've worn down everybody else in their lives, the way they've, worn down their mom when they were 3 or 4 or 5 years old and they wanted a toy and mom said no, so they got on the floor and started screaming until they got what they wanted. But for this woman to say, if she'd said, I can't believe they shot her, that's one thing, right? That's understandable. But for her to say, I can't believe these guys had real bullets, it's psychotic. It's psychotically delusional, and it's an insane worldview. They think the whole thing is theoretical. David Boutte says the reason the left thinks fascism is on the rise is because they've spent 30 years calling people fascists online without getting punched in the face like those kind of slanders deserve. Yes, for the first time that I'm aware of, just politically aware, which is 25, 30 years or something, for the first time ever, leftists are going backwards. Ever. The worst that has ever happened to them is they've been stopped. Now they're actually losing ground. And to them, this is Nazi Germany. And I've heard people say, tell me the difference between Donald Trump and Adolf Hitler. And I'd say, well, I'd start with the beer hall push, and I would end with, 12 million people in concentration camps killed. That's where I would go. But there are just no consequences. So it's the ultimate FAFO situation, and they can't believe it. And I'll bolster this argument by saying, if you ever see video, there's not a lot of them, but if you ever see video of a bunch of protesters blocking a street, and one person decides that they're not going to stop, when that person goes through the crowd and knocks somebody over or injures them or something, the reaction is not outrage. The reaction is disbelief. Disbelief. It's not, God damn you, it's, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? What's the matter with you? Are you kidding me? Yeah, what is the matter with you? They must be kidding you because they didn't stop. They're gobsmacked by it. So here we go. Our crisis of our lifetimes is not going to be, the Imperial Japanese Navy or the Wehrmacht. Our crisis is going to be actionable, committable levels of mental illness in no less than 30 million people. They are not capable of working in this world. They are, as long as they stay in their playground, as long as they're surrounded by people who think the same way they do, and as long as they associate with each other, then that's okay. But once they run into anything like consequences, they just fold. And the number of these people that get put in the backseat of police cars and are just swearing at the top of their lungs, and they're lying back, they're handcuffed behind their back, and they're just kicking the windows, or they're banging their heads against the windows. They're children. And I don't know what to say, man. I saw two different sets of videos for two different content creators on YouTube. One of them was like what it was like to be a kid in the, well, they have a couple of them, but one of them was like what was it like to be a kid in the 60s and 70s? What was it like to be a teenager in the 70s and stuff? And both of these videos said that that the fact that people like me and many of our listeners of a certain age grew up in a world where after school we'd come home, we'd get out, well, I had to get out of my school uniform. After school, you'd come home and you'd go out and mom would say, be home by dark or be home by dinner. and they didn't care. I don't, it's not that they didn't care where you were. They just knew that you would, they already had raised you to be independent enough to make little mistakes to know that you weren't going to do anything stupid. And you would just go out. And what this guy was talking about, what that did was it just created a sense of problem solving, risk assessment, threat assessment, fairness. You had to adjudicate your own disputes among your friends because there was no mom helicoptering in to make a judgment. Nothing was structured. Nothing was this. And he also went on to say that the other thing we had is that we had a lot of time to think about things. And one thing that I've been on about for a long time was we not only had a lot of time to think about things, we also had a lot of times to have to wait for things. You had to wait for the next episode of the TV show for a week. I remember there weren't a lot of sequential TV shows back then. In fact, the only one I can think of that was like modern TV, where one episode is stitched to another, was Lost in Space, and that didn't really count because there was not like a major story arc. But there was kind of a, do-do-dum, ba-da-dum, ba-da-dum. It's like, ooh, I have to wait now, find out what happens. But everything is instant gratification now. So all of these things, being bored, being alone, being, being sad, having to fail, all of this stuff just toughened you up. And rejection for a lot of Gen Z is getting on like a Tinder app and swiping right for just about everybody you could stomach and not getting any responses. But that's not nearly as painful as having to actually go up to the person and ask them if they want to go out with you and have them say no. And you had to call on a landline, and you would have to call this girl after school, and you're more than likely to either speak to her mom or her dad. Hello, it's out there, and it's like, yeah, hang on a second. And man, I just remember being like, good Lord, I think I'd rather just get shot, frankly. But those things build resiliency and character and so on. And none of these people have had that. There's another theory out there that I think has got a lot of truth to it too, and I've only heard it fairly recently, and it's a phenomenon that some people are starting to call dark woke. And basically what they're saying is that feminism has so set women against their biology and made them so unpleasant to be with that women who, in the prime of their lives, should be getting lots of affection and attention and care and nurturing and all that other stuff, find themselves alone. They've been told to blame men for this, and they're taking that internal rage out on the patriarchy, which is a thing to them. The patriarchy is a thing, and ICE is part of the patriarchy. And they're miserable, and they're unhappy, and they're violent, and they're bitter, and they're going to get their payback. And one way that women perceive themselves able to get their payback is to be in a mob in public, because they know that society once held that, a woman could punch you in the face or throw a drink on you or whatever, and you could not respond. And this is how they feel about ICE. We will get in their faces, and we'll punch them in the face, and we'll do this and we'll do that, and they won't be able to do anything about it, because they can't be using real bullets, because when has anyone ever hurt them back, ever? And this is going to get worse. It's going to get worse. So we'll see. Here we go. Tranquility Base, USA. Don't know if you remember Coral Gables High School in 1977. As a matter of fact, I do. I graduated from there that year. Coral Gables, police stopped me in my mom's 63 Rambler, awesome car, on the way home from our friend's house at about 8:30 p.m. 3 police cars blocked me on Granada Boulevard, and 8 officers jumped out with guns drawn and ordered me out of the car. I immediately complied. Short story, someone in a 63 Rambler robbed a store, and they thought I might be that person. They apologized for guns, but I obeyed their commands without blinking an eye. Would have never mouthed off to the, to the police. Yeah. And that's why we don't get shot by the police. If a policeman comes up to my window and says, driver's license, please, I give them the driver's license. And if they say, I need you to step out of the car, then I step out of the car. Because I know that if I disagree with this police officer, he's not going to go away. And he's just going to get more police officers. What was that Ron White joke about that? He's talking about getting in a fight with a bunch of people. He says, I didn't know how many of them there were, but I knew that it was enough, or something like that. And sometimes you'll even hear them flex, like, they're in the back seat of the car. They've been, for the first time in their lives, they've been told no. For the first time in their lives, people haven't done what they told them to do, and they're constantly trying to control this. Pick up my phone, if I'm taking me to jail, take me now. It's like constantly having to gain control, get that upper hand, and they're just feral. What did I see over there that I liked a lot? Where'd it go? Somebody, I can't seem to find it. Somebody in the YouTube stream said something to the effect, oh, here it is, sorry, it's Lapco with a super chat. Women have gone from playing hard to get to playing hard to want. Yeah, exactly. They're unpleasant, and that's a real problem for Gen Z men, and that makes it a problem for Gen Z women. And we have the left to thank for all of this. We have the left boomers, we have the left Gen Xers, we have the left-wing millennials, and we got the left-wing Gen Zers. The rest of us have been fighting against this as hard as we could, and they've lost this battle, and they know it. They know it. They know it's over. They know that's why they're so angry, and that's why they're losing their minds over ICE, because they can tell that nobody wants this stuff. We've talked about that many times before on the Pop Culture Show. Okay, moving on. Roadrunner. Greetings, friend Bill. Hello, Roadrunner. How are you? Do you have any idea why AFWLs, look, awfuls, affluent white female liberals, is that pronounced awfuls? Of course it is. Do you have any idea why awfuls have gone so bat guano crazy? Every time I look at the news, there's some crazy woman doing something stupid. Is it time to revisit the 19th Amendment? Well, they're not making a super case for it. All of this stuff is a result of a lot of larger issues. Obviously, the birth control pill fundamentally changed the equation. It allowed women to become as promiscuous as men, which I genuinely believe is not their nature, but they have been told by these communist feminists that this was the mark of a real woman, is somebody who's slept with 100 guys by the time she's 20. And so the women do this, and every time they do it with some other partner, they get more and more desensitized and more able to say, well, I like this part of this guy, I like this about this, I like this guy, and then he was nice, and he was polite, and he was rich, and he was generous, and all this other stuff. And then they wait for the guy who's got all these things together, and that person doesn't exist except for me. And so, they're going to have a long wait ahead of them. And they know it. They know it. They're miserable. They've been fed this Disney lie. You're the princess. The prince will do everything. He'll take care of you. And all you have to do is show up. And Prince Charming's horse threw a shoe on the way to the club tonight, sweetheart, and he's going to be a little bit late. So, yeah. I think we covered most of that, Roadrunner, but the line about revisit the 19th Amendment, which is obviously the amendment that gave women the right to vote. I was going to say, if we're going to revisit voting, we ought to revisit the requirement to have property. The left loses their mind over this. But throughout history, it's been a requirement for you to have some kind of control over the outcome of society. It's been a requirement that you had property. And the reasoning behind this is really pretty sound. If you have to own property in order to vote, that means that you are self-sufficient and probably relatively wealthy, and you're not going to vote money out of your own pocket. When when you've got nothing to lose and everything to gain by increasing taxes and by increasing regulations and redistributing wealth, well then, you're going to redistribute all of the wealth out to everybody else, and that's the end of the game. Um, uh, the, the greatest threat to this country, I wouldn't have said this even 10 years ago, but I think it's crystal clear to me. I'm just speaking out loud now. I, honest to God, and I think I make a strong case for it, the largest threat to the existence of not only of the United States, but of Western civilization are affluent white liberal women. The awfuls. They're insane, and they get more insane every day, and they're getting more and more irrational every day, and they're getting more and more scary every day. You've seen the eyes, right? These eyes, the Donald Trump's a fascist. Those eyes, they're completely adrenalized, and they're absolutely out of control. And there you go. Kisama says with a super chat, if property ownership was required to vote, the Democrats would never win again. Yes, exactly. I think democracy is overrated, and you can take that out of context as much as you want to. In a perfect republic, you don't need democracy because in a perfect republic, all of your rights are protected by the law. A democracy is, the old saw, two wolves and a sheep voting for what's for dinner. And a republic doesn't have that problem. But that's why the Democrats are constantly talking about they're stealing our democracy, our democracy, our democracy, and the Republicans just play along like the rhetorically deaf idiots that they are. Oh, we're not a threat to our democracy. We're not a democracy, we're a republic. It's a much, much, much better system. And if we started playing that game, we wouldn't take the kind of beatings that we take in public. Although we've been hitting back a little bit lately, and and all of these gains, by the way, that Trump has made, and he certainly disappointed some people in a lot of areas, but nevertheless, we're seeing things that I never thought we would see in a year. But hang on, thought just flew out of my, what was it? Donald Trump is able to accomplish what he's been able to accomplish because of one simple thing, really, just one thing, and it's a simple thing, and that is he doesn't care. He knows what people say about him, and he doesn't let it stop him. I suspect he's able to do that because he came up in New York real estate, which is the most venal, competitive, cutthroat, nasty, underhanded business. And I suspect if you can survive in that environment, then you get skin that's. And the strange thing about Trump is, he's on one hand he's got the thickest skin of anybody I've ever seen, and on the other hand he's a very thin-skinned guy. But now Chase Smith, I think, has got the best solution. I really think. I don't think there's any chance of returning to property ownership, but Chase Smith says if you want to vote, then you need to be off government assistance. And that applies to corporations and everybody else as well. Yeah, if you are receiving benefits, you lose the right to vote until you're off the benefits, then you get it back again. That seems perfectly reasonable to me. Otherwise, you're going to continue to vote yourself benefits. And that's not what the benefits were supposed to be doing. But that's what we got. I heard. I mentioned I heard two really good channels. One of them was the psychology of growing up in the 70s, and this other one I just heard today. I think it was Intellectual Architect. Is that it? It's kind of a philosophy psychology channel. Let me see. Thought Architect. Listened to a couple things of his today, and he was talking about the psychology of stupid, and how our evolutionary biology has pinned us in a corner where stupidity is rewarded, and in a nutshell, this is basically his argument. we are wired to respond more positively to people who are confident than people who are pensive about things. And he said this made a lot of sense back when things were simple. If you're standing there and somebody says "run," it's because he sees a lion, and if he sounds like he means it, then the smart thing to do is run. But as life gets more and more complex, the solutions to problems, in fact, even understanding the problems gets more and more complex. You have to be more intelligent, and this is where Dunning-Kruger comes into effect. The Dunning-Kruger effect says that the less you know about something, the more certain you are about what you know. This is why there are people that believe the earth is flat. You can give them an example from physics, but they don't know enough about physics to understand the argument. They are absolutely certain in their beliefs. And I'm not trying to slag the guy, but I think Joe Rogan is a great example of this. I've heard Joe Rogan will have guys on the show talking about UFOs, and he's leaning into it. And he said, I used to believe in the moon landings, and then I heard that they could never get through the radiation belt, so now I know it's false. And I'm saying, okay, Joe, well, if they couldn't get through the radiation belt, how much radiation did they take going through the Van Allen belt? How much radiation does it take to kill a guy? He doesn't even think to ask those questions. And so people respond to confidence, and they respond to people with simplistic solutions because they don't require a lot of uncertainty, and that require you to question your motives or anything. And as the world gets more and more complex, what this does is it selects for stupidity, because it's selecting for confidence, but confidence, that blind confidence, I'm talking about self-esteem, blind confidence that you're right is a sign of relatively low IQ. The smarter you get, the more unsure you are about things, because you realize how complex things are. But people who come in with absolute certainty is a sign of people who are not necessarily unintelligent, but don't know enough about the field. So anyway, this guy was basically saying, and this is how it works. And so he also said that intelligence correlates pretty highly with moral decision making, with a moral framework. People who are less intelligent are much more confident about them being right, which means that they're much more willing to step on people's toes, which means that a politician who lies, who takes credit for other people's work, who says things that he knows his audience wants to hear, even though he may not agree with them personally, that person has a tremendous advantage in politics and a significant advantage in business. So the guy with the innovative solutions, the guy who says we need to look at how we're doing things, the guy who says, our entire accounting system is obsolete and wonky, that guy is not as likely to get a promotion as the guy who comes in and says, there's a couple minor things wrong with the accounting system. Don't worry about it. I'll just go in there and straighten it out, have it fixed in an hour. Those people get hired and promoted and elected. And there's an enormous advantage to people who are willing to lie. They have an enormous advantage over people who simply can't. And so what this point this guy was making is, if you start out with let's take a CEO or something, and he's got an IQ of 100, and he is insecure about himself, he knows he doesn't really know as much as he says he does or is perceived as he does, so he hires people with a 95 IQ because he doesn't want them to outshine him. Those 95 IQ people are already substandard in terms of intelligence. They've always been insecure about themselves, so they hire people with 90 IQs. And then all of those mid-level managers who don't want any trouble and who don't want to be outshone and don't want to be surpassed, they hire people with 85 IQs. And you find out that by the time you get to the people who are actually making the stuff, you're a standard deviation in IQs below the norm. You got a company with an IQ of 85. And first time I ever heard this was quite a long time ago, and it made perfect sense to me. And it said, what was it? What the wording was? something to the effect of grade A people hire grade A people, grade B people hire grade C people. And the second I heard that, I went, well, that makes perfect sense. If you're insecure about something, then you want to hire people who will not outshine you. You want to hire people who know less than you. If you are confident about who you are, then you want to hire people who are better than you, because you realize that we all win. And so that's basically the difference between two people. And that's why the dumber you are, the more likely you are to call somebody stupid. Yes, and Dave Big Booty has got because this is written in stone. I mean, there's never been a clearer example, I don't think, in history. So Barack Obama comes off as being a genius, editor of the Harvard Law Review and all the rest of it. I would say he's smarter than average. I think he's probably like 105, maybe 110 something. He's not a stupid guy. But he doesn't want anybody to outshine him, so he hires somebody less competent than him because he doesn't want to be outshone by his vice president. So Barack Obama selects Biden. Biden's not nearly as smart as Obama. When Biden runs for president, he doesn't want somebody to outshine him, so he runs with somebody who's less capable than he is, which is Kamala Harris. And when Kamala Harris is ready to run, then she has to find somebody who's less competent than she is, so that she doesn't get outshone by them. So she goes with Tim Walz, and it's just a downward spiral. Trump, on the other hand, seems to be doing the exact opposite. He is an A-list mind in terms of his ability to understand complex situations, else he wouldn't be a billionaire. Economics and deal making and international trade, military, he knows what he's doing. And so, and by the way, Trump needs a little ego stimulation, but his name is on all these buildings. He is president of the United States. So Trump hires Marco Rubio and Pete Hegseth, both of whom know more about foreign policy and war than Trump does. He's an A-list mind that's hiring A-list minds. He's not on that downward staircase that the Democrats are on, because they're just insecure about things. And one of the other things I've heard that I just love so much is the saying, he's the smartest guy in the room. And I heard somebody once saying, if you're the smartest guy in the room, you're in the wrong room. And I thought, man, yeah, that's it. If you're the smartest guy in the room, you're in the wrong room. What are you gonna learn if you're the smartest guy in the room? Nothing. So there you go. And this is why smart people. I had a friend who was the exact opposite of this. He would say things that were just nuts, just really dumb. And when you called him on it, he would just double down. But really, smart people. Somebody says, "Well, we need some QDCs in there," or something. I was like, "Well, what's a QDC?" You're not afraid to ask because you're not insecure about being stupid. So there's that. Awfuls. Never heard the term before. Love it. In fact, I might do that for my right angle tomorrow. In fact, I'm going to do a little screen cap of that because I like that much. Okay, moving on. Steve Young. Hey, Bill, have you seen the 1942 movie Keeper of the Flame, starring Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn, about political corruption and an attempted fascist takeover of America? I have not even heard of it. Boy, that's ahead of its time if it's 1942. Tracy and Hepburn. Dave Big Booty has elaborated. Awful's affluent, white, female, urban liberals. I haven't, Steve. I never heard about it. It's like 1, 2, 3. It's going to be legend in the stratosphere community. I'm afraid I can't really comment on it, but Tracy and Hepburn are quite a couple, and if they're talking about that in 1942, something else. I saw Mr. Smith Goes to Washington in film school, and I love that movie, and I've always been a sucker for that kind of American idealism, which is dangerous. It's a blind spot for me. But I believe it. I want to believe it. I want to believe it. And certainly, there's no question that those things, that kind of altruism does exist. I think it's just a question of degrees, but yeah. So there we go. Lapco92 has a super chat over there. Let's see. Indulge me, if you would. Process 3 Technicolor. Process 3 Technicolor. Use 2 filters, red and green. Image search Dr. X color or Mystery of the Wax Museum color for amazing 1932 to 1933 examples of visual tech. Seen them? No, but I can tell you something I have seen, and I might have seen this on Corridor Crew. And I don't mean to just blow off what you're mentioning there, but I don't know the process you're talking about, so I'm just countering with something I did see. These guys, I really like them. I don't listen to them a lot, but they're great. In fact, I'd like to work with them. If you're not familiar with the channel, Corridor Crew is a YouTube channel where LA-based, I would say probably, well, millennials, I guess they are, young guys. They run a special effects company, and they do analysis of special effects in movies, and they recreate special effects. So these guys, and they know all the special effects. They know blue screen and live action, and they just look at something and say, oh, right, how did they do that? Well, these guys are real live action actors, and they're composited in this background. They're great. They're fun. But they did an episode once where there was, yep, Coffee Shinada's got it. They were looking at Mary Poppins, and they couldn't believe their eyes. And the particular scene they were looking at was the scene in Mary Poppins where they go into the world of the guys who were drawing the chalk things on the sidewalk. And what they found was that Mary Poppins and Dick Van Dyke were against animated backgrounds, but she was wearing like lace and a veil, and the key was perfect. And you can't key like that today. They just didn't know how they did it. They just couldn't figure it out. It was the best key that anyone had ever seen, and Mary Poppins was what, 62 or something in that general ballpark, 65, somewhere in there, right? And they didn't know how they did it. And they researched it. They really got so interested in it because it was amazing. And what they found was that the guys at Disney had figured out that there was a certain kind of light, and I'm going to call it sodium vapor, that may not be it. In fact, it's probably not it. But what they found was that if you used like lighting that used like an arc light from, let's just say again, sodium vapor, it put out a yellow that was so monochromatical. It was perfectly monochromatical. So a key works by taking a color out of the picture and making that clear. And the wider a window of color there is, when you pull that color out, it takes all of the other details with it. So ideally, it was sodium vapor. Got it right. Thank you, Andrew Julie. So what they did was they found out that sodium vapor, this is prior to lasers, because lasers are by definition monochromatic. Laser is one frequency of light. So if you take a red laser and you are able to preserve enough data, you key that out, nothing else goes out, because you're just taking out that one specific color. Now what they found was if they did it with white light against a green screen, you would take out the green, but the green would get scattered by the lace, and the edges wouldn't be soft. But what they found was if they lit this thing with this sodium vapor yellow light, and then Andrew DeLay says they had a prism that they would shoot it on a camera, and it has to come from the same lens. It can't be any parallax, can't be any perspective shift. So this yellow light is coming into the camera, and that one specific color, frequency of light, would be bounced off by a prism, and that one color would make the black and white matte, and then the other colors would go in and make the shot. And I think didn't they have to wear like completely special makeup, and all the costumes had to look the correct colors under yellow light. It was a lot of work, but it's perfect. And I just think that's just an amazing example of how that works. Lapco92 again says, Autochrome gave us color photos in the early 1900s using potato starches on a purple, green, orange format, and some of that tech is lost. Hey, stay safe. How are you? What up with you there, Haas? Good to see you. So anyway, highly recommend that. That was just a fascinating little piece of business there. Okay, and we're on the last one here. Eric Blake, tonight, the case of the Amelia Ascendancy. Dun, 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 dun. It was a rainy night in the big city. I love that noir kind of stuff. Hey, Bill, have you been aware of the rise of the character Amelia through social media? I'm not. If not, recently the British government created a very flat-looking animated series to apparently lay out why folks are so wrong to oppose all the refugee, immigration, and other lefty policies that have screwed up everything. There is no other explanation for the fact that left-wingers are intentionally committing suicide in places like England. There's no way it can be an accident. There's no way they cannot be aware of it. It is absolutely intentional destruction of the country. I don't know what the reason is, whether it's self-hatred or whether it's some idea that you can ally with. As long as we get to remain in power, then who cares if it's Muslims voting for whatever it is. But there's no way it's accidental what they're doing there and trying to do here. Okay, so here we go. Recently, the British government created a very flat-looking animated series to apparently lay out why folks are so wrong to oppose all the refugee, immigration, and other lefty policies that have screwed up everything. The conservative foil, and I'm sure with that you kind of know where this is going, is of all things a purple-haired goth girl. I swear I'm not making this up. Named Amelia. So the purple-haired goth girl is the conservative foil. Well, they've lost already. Well, in the great tradition, yes. In the great tradition of Archie Bunker, Rorschach, Jack Donaghy, Ron Swanson, Amelia has become an incredibly popular cultural icon. Now, I'm reasonably sure that the original animators made her the aforementioned purple-haired goth girl wearing loose sweatshirts, etc., to ensure that that wouldn't happen. Doesn't matter what she looks like, Eric, as I'm sure you well know. What matters is she is in opposition to the state-sponsored propaganda, and people will like that automatically. Of course, the artists of the internet have already vastly improved her tastes in attire, and there's been quite a few AI vids of her being absolutely gorgeous and proclaiming a restoration of jolly old England with a radiant smile. Observe and please turn on the volume for yourself. And here is a link for X. So it's a 3D version of Amelia, looking pretty attractive for a. I'm not listening to it, but I will later when I post all this stuff. Okay, that's Amelia. Let me see. Let me see what she looked like originally. But there's so many different versions here. A lot of things that say this backfired hard, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it has kind of an anime kind of style to it. But yes, it's very flat. It's very, devoid of detail and kind of minimalist. I can't wait to see it so I can hear how unintentionally racist she is. But the 3D stuff is, and she doesn't look the same in any of these, so they didn't. Okay, there's a 40K one of her in pink Astarte's power suit, and that's the only time I've ever seen a female Astartes that I really really liked. She gets a pass. Oh Lord. Just looking. Well, she looks like she's crushing it. There she is on a landing craft with well, they look like They look like Brits, but they got American helmets. They look like British uniforms, but they're definitely not Tommy's helmets. Okay, so AI Amelia is everywhere. I had not heard of her before this instant. So back to the question. Let's see here. Norman Lee, eat your heart out. So as politics is downstream of culture, Bill, would you say that this is a good sign for the UK? I would say that this is a better sign for the UK than the election of, some major conservative, because I always pay attention to what the grassroots are doing. What do the people want? Like I've said, okay, I see the original Amelia. Yeah, she looks like that kind of big government kind of thing you'd see on the side of the underground in London, kind of. This is epic. Wow. This is a little bit like Sydney Sweeney. This kind of like pretty rebelliousness, where we've been told for so long about body positivity and all of this stuff. And Miss Alabama is 450 pounds, and a man and all this other stuff. So when Sydney Sweeney came out with that ad, the left lost their minds because somebody had said, hey, he's not wearing any clothes, and that kind of woke everybody up. Now they've got an Amelia as the Lady of the Lake handing Excalibur to Arthur. It's epic. They just there's one with her like Joan of Arc in front of a bunch of British knights. Yeah, this is, I love it. I love it. Tolkien would be proud. Here's one that says, I made her really hot and I didn't notice the flags. Anyway, go Amelia. It doesn't matter if she's not real. She's the ideal situation. That's perception is politics, dude. Would somebody make a German version of Amelia? How about Sophie? I think she would probably need to be in Lederhosen, serving giant steins of beer at Oktoberfest, and then you're on target. It's epic. She's just I'd never heard of it, and I imagine it's relatively real. But here's a random comment. Oh man, this is great, Amelia, you absolute firecracker, you. She's the epitome of British spunk wrapped in a sexy purple-haired package. This is from an old guy. Keep flying that flag high, love. You've got a red-blooded patriot fan here cheering from the States. Go UK. It's got to be the greatest propaganda failure in human history on the part of Labour and friends. I hope it destroys them. I love it. I'm going to put Amelia in. She's going to have a cameo in the colonies. Just going to be somebody behind a counter someplace. It's great, Eric. It's absolutely great. I love it. Yes, it's absolutely great. Plus, he's got a PS here. I was getting admittedly fearful at the apparent shelving of truth bombs, as we kind of need good old debunk video and so on, but I found a few from the Fact Quickie channel that have actually proven somewhat satisfactory. Here's another link. I like him, actually. Is that Simon Whistler, whatever his name is? How the moon landing conspiracy hoax started. Yeah. Great. He's got a great voice, this guy. And when I first saw him, is it Simon Whistler? Is that his name? I thought, God, to talk about the ultimate beta liberal, but he's got this tremendous voice, man. He's great. Lord Bio says, need to be nose art on your ship. I was going to call the free trader the Mary Sue, and I'm going to still, because you're not going to beat that name. But Amelia could be the name of another private ship. This is what's great. I love this kind of thing. I love it. Did she actually say that, Eric? Amelia to Starmer, how'd we go from Churchill to you git? It's epic. It's just epic. I have not heard of it, but this is the kind of thing that gets traction. And as I was saying before, with regard to these guys that are making these AI Star Wars interstitials where Luke Skywalker is actually Luke Skywalker, said it a couple episodes now, the world has gone completely inverted, and the only thing that has credibility now is fan fiction everything that comes from the official sources, like you know, any of the like Starfleet Academy, for example, is mistrusted. Yeah, I'm looking at this. Is what do flat earthers actually think? How do we really know? They are kind of like truth bombs. How long is that? 16 minutes? Yeah, it's a little longer than I like, but you get the idea. Yeah, all right, sure. I'll look at one or two of these, Eric, and see what he's doing. And yeah, we'll take it from there. No, he's got he's got one from 3 years ago. How do we know the moon landing? How do we actually know that we landed on the moon? That's 2.9 million views. That's great. Can't have enough of them, man. Can't have enough of them. The thing to do is to swing the. You gotta be careful about this. You don't want to really turn anybody off before the thing, but you gotta kind of have to. I'm not sure you even do this in the truth bombs, but basically, the people that believe in things like the flat Earth or the moon landing was a hoax, they do it because it inflates their sense of importance. It's all Dunning-Kruger. It's all the stuff we talked about earlier. But basically, it makes them feel like they've got insider knowledge. They know they're not, on some level, they know they're not really smart, but they've heard enough facts to convince them. So now they are 100% certain it's true. And anybody who doesn't believe that the Earth is flat is a sheeple who's been, bought off by the, by Big Globe. And okay, you gotta mock them a little bit, Gotta mock them a little bit. Kobo Buddy Music says, I put up Amelia as a reply to your last right angle tweet. If you want to see it, Bill, okay, I'll take a look. Aussie Drone Guy says, proving the Earth is round is very simple. It's so simple that only an intellectual can not believe it. Just the ships going over the horizon, man. You really have to. You have to have an incredibly powerful emotional driver to be able to not only ignore but to openly and actively and publicly contradict obvious information that's obvious. I mean, for instance, if you wanted to get into who runs the global economy, there's a lot of areas where you could start where you well, it'd be kind of tough to prove that. But I mean, disappearing over the horizon. Which brings me to a nice conclusion here, because that was the last of the questions. I was listening to this thing I mentioned about the psychology of stupidity, and he was talking about why people resist this, and it's a psychological framework that gives them moral superiority and intellectual superiority to themselves. So there are two different kinds of people in terms of people who believe nutty things, and we'll take flat earthers as an example. One group of flat earthers got together. I don't remember the number, but I want to say it was something like $150,000. It was expensive. They pooled their money and they bought, I think it was a laser gyroscope. But in any event, these guys who are claiming the Earth is flat apparently knew enough physics to know that this gyroscope was so sensitive that it should measure any kind of motion, and that if the Earth was actually rotating, that it would show a progression of 15 degrees per hour, because that's very close, almost exactly what the Earth rotates at, about 15 degrees per hour. And so they bought this laser ring gyroscope, and they turned it on, and they gathered around, and what happened was it showed that the Earth was rotating at a rate of 15 degrees per hour. And they said, well, that can't be right, because we all know that the Earth is flat. So obviously something is influencing this instrument to give us this faulty reading. Remember, they bought this instrument, laser ring gyro, thank you very much, PGT. They bought this instrument because of its precision. This was going to prove their case. So when it turned out it not only didn't prove their case, but proved the opposite, they ignored the evidence from this device that they were sure was going to prove their case. They said it's being influenced by something. So they built something like a, what are those things called? Is it a Fermi? No. A cage. It's not a Tesla cage. Maxwell cage. Something that eliminates electromagnetic influence, right? So they put that into this Faraday box. Just beat you to it there, Airtechie. Faraday box. And so they put it in the Faraday box, or Faraday cage, and they measured it again, and it turned out it showed that the Earth was rotating at 15 degrees per hour. And they said, well, obviously, the entire idea behind a laser ring gyro is faulty. It's part of the propaganda. So they dismissed that evidence. Now, those people cannot be cured. Those people you will never, ever, ever get back. However, a different group of flat earthers had said that if we could get to Antarctica, we could prove that the Earth is flat, because in the summertime, the globalists say that because the Earth is tilted, the sun never sets in Antarctica, you go a 24-hour day. They say that Antarctica has been put off limits. No one's allowed to go to Antarctica because if you pass the ice wall, you'll discover the truth about the flat Earth. Well, apparently they didn't hear that back in, I don't know what it was, late 70s, I guess, Air New Zealand flew a flight to go and have a look at Mount Erebus. And I think they did 12 flights. It's well inside of Antarctica, and on the final flight, they got their navigation numbers input wrong, and they crashed into that mountain. So the whole thing about, well, no one's allowed to visit since 1950. Plenty of people visited before then. Robert Falcon Scott got there in, I want to say 1912, and same for Roald Amundsen, who beat him by about a month. So anyway, point I'm making is, these guys, these flat earthers, went down to Antarctica, and they stayed up for 24 hours, and they watched the sun go around the horizon, and those flat earthers said, well, we're obviously wrong. We're obviously wrong. There's the evidence. We came to get evidence, and we saw the evidence, and the evidence is overwhelming, and we were wrong. And that kind of person is a pleasure. That kind of person is a reasonable person. They got hooked on some theory, like I did for a week with, believing that Shakespeare was really, Edward de Vere, 16th Earl of Oxford, because they heard one side of the story, never heard the other side. But they went down there, they saw compelling evidence, they changed their minds. But the guys with the laser ring gyros, that's not stupidity. That's a deep-seated psychological problem. And, there you go. Okay. Well, I think that's it for the questions. I've still got a show to do. I need to speak to the lovely Natasha. There has been, as we record this on the 19th, there's been a major coronal mass ejection, and there is the faintest possibility that if we go someplace dark, we might see a little tiny bit of green glow on the northern horizon from the aurora. But if you're anywhere north of Northern California, I'd go outside right now. I almost said I've never seen it. When I flew to Norway in 2018, and we were going over the pole, and it was a really relatively calm night. But I remember if I put like a blanket over my head and sealed off the window, I could see like a faint gray cloud out there, and when it was really at its best, I could tell it was a little bit of green in there, but that was it. I really want to see an aurora. I'm not even going to bring up the solar eclipse thing because it's still the most traumatic thing that's happened to me in a long time. But I really want to see him. Really want to see him. Infidel says, I'm in Idaho, but it's overcast here, and I've heard that I know Bert got some pictures of the one that happened last year. There was another big coronal mass ejection back 24, I want to say. so a little over a year ago, and that'd be something to see. Any gremlins on the wing? Says Kirk's bamboo bazooka. Yeah, it was ripping up the engine, tearing off the pieces, and laughing. I know I've mentioned this once before. I was not a fan of the show by any means. In fact, maybe next week we'll talk about Big Bang Theory, because I simply don't understand. I understand. I like everybody in that show except for Sheldon, who I just despise him. And young Sheldon, I don't know how these shows can be built around people that are that bloody annoying. But anyway, there was an episode of Third Rock where John Lithgow's a regular on that show, and they're aliens, right? And they had an episode where William Shatner made a guest appearance, and he was saying, "Well, why were you, sorry I'm late, but I was coming in on the plane, and I looked outside the window, and I saw a creature on the wing, and it was tearing the parts of the wing across. We're lucky we landed alive." And then Lithgow says, "I saw that too." It was a great moment because Shatner played the guy in was it Terror at 20,000 Feet or whatever. Shatner played the guy originally in 1963, 64 on Twilight Zone, and then Lithgow played him again in the Twilight Zone movie. It was my favorite in joke ever, I think. It was absolutely great. It was really, really funny and clever. Okay, I think that'll do it. So anyway, we're colonies are moving along, and we're getting, not only are we getting the basics down, but we're getting the pipeline down. So things go much faster now that I know what we have to do in what order. So we'll get on the we'll get Will built. No one's really shown one still of Will, and we'll get those characters. They'll get those 4 Turner characters built, and we'll start producing some stuff that we can use not only in the fundraising, but I don't want to do them again for the show. It'd be nice if these were the first final images that were rendered. That's certainly how I'm treating them, so we'll see. Anyway, this show is made possible by the members of BillWhittle.com. You probably know that by now, to whom we are grateful, eternally grateful, and still grateful. And we just, we just never get over that. So we're really glad to have you. I don't know about the Gen Z Academy thing. I think, maybe we'll just hang out a sign and see. I have to give that some thought about how we're going to handle that. But one way or another, we'll be back on Thursday. Thanks again for all the fish and the constructive criticism and all this, and the constant introduction of things that I didn't know anything about, like that reactor and all the rest of it. So until then, we will see you guys on Thursday night on your very own Stratosphere Lounge, and take care until then.